Hello you guys, welcome to another episode of I Watched It So You Don't Have To. This time around we're talking about the movie with the best title card I have seen in a very long time. Also, the same movie that's gonna have me looking at cheese graters a little bit differently from now on. We're talking about Evil Dead Rise. Beth is coming to terms with changes in her life that lead her back to her sister, Ellie. Beth quickly realizes that she's missed out on so much of her sister and her nieces and nephews' lives. But the estranged sisters' reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing entities. They are forced to survive the horrors of the Necronomicon as they face the most nightmarish version of family. First off, let's tackle that title card that we mentioned at the top of the video. What a way to start a movie. I cannot express to you guys how amazing that title card is. I can easily say without any doubt, 100% confidence, that that title card is iconic. Moving on from the title card, let's talk about that hair-raising opening sequence. You guys, it goes from 0 to 100 immediately and sets a very familiar tone in broad daylight. Additionally, I really love the camera work. If you've seen any of the Evil Dead films, then you'll immediately recognize that chase cam POV that's prominent throughout the entire franchise. It really helps to set a familiar tone in an all too familiar location. I love how the scene was set immediately, and we got enough background on the characters in such a short amount of time. Now, of course, this isn't enough background to allow us to connect to the characters, but it is enough background to understand their roles and the type of character they are. Earlier, I mentioned going from 0 to 100, and I gotta say, you guys, we don't stay there for long. I had just watched 2013's Evil Dead the weekend before watching Evil Dead Rise, and I have to say that I really do appreciate the attempt to give us more fleshed out characters. Right up front, I will say initially, it was very easy to connect with them and believe their relationships with each other, despite how quickly the movie changed direction. The story is there. A family and other tenants in their apartment building are all trapped while somebody decides to mess with a book bound in human flesh. Don't you just hate it when that happens? What really got me here going into the movie were the really complex topics of matricide and child abuse, danger, and harm. The movie didn't go as deep on this angle of storytelling as I was expecting it to. In terms of the emotional toll and high tension, the movie instead focused on the action. And by action, you guys, I really just mean the intensity and violence, so let's talk about that. The movie is violent, and it will make you cringe. The violence and the action are really just elevated throughout the entire movie because of the practical effects. From the makeup to the prosthetics, everything was seamless. And the movie looks stellar. Speaking of looks, the lighting is really moody and it just really adds an extra layer to that apprehension. Touching back on the mood really quick, something that really stood out to me in the movie, and I had to Google it, you guys, because I wanted to talk to you about it. Deep focus. From what I learned, deep focus is a technique used in photography and film where the foreground, middle ground, and background are all in focus. If you watched my Knock at the Cabin video, then you'll remember when I said that I really enjoyed the tight shots in the movie, how close the actors were to the camera, how much of the screen they took up, how close they were to each other. And it's the same thing here with Evil Dead Rise. These shots were just so unsettling, they were so uncomfortable, and really added a lot to the atmosphere of the film. Speaking of this weight of uneasiness, that stress, let's talk about the acting in this movie because it was surprisingly good across the board. We've got to talk about the standout that is Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie. She portrayed the character so well, giving that innate strength of a mother up front and giving us a woman we can easily root for. Things quickly shifted as the warm mother faded and the deadite took hold. Her performance might have even gotten better, and maybe I was still rooting for her. Lily Sullivan as Beth is fantastic. I really like to see her portrayal as Beth struggling to connect with her sister Ellie and the moments she had with her nieces and nephew. The role she took on as the children's protector and how, as the movie progressed, she had to face the situation and her reality. The younger actors in the movie all did a fantastic job. I think I mentioned in, well, any movie we've talked about with younger actors that it's kind of a hit and miss, in my opinion, and I don't expect too much from them. So when I say these guys really delivered, they did. Alright, you guys, I watched it so you don't have to, but was it worth the watch? Yes, if you're a fan of the franchise, then you can't miss this movie. Speaking of the franchise, I think it's a good time to admit to you guys that I haven't actually watched the original Evil Dead trilogy since I was younger, like a child. But I did watch a recap here on YouTube of the original trilogy. I did watch the 2013 Evil Dead film, and I have to say that Evil Dead Rise really tried to balance the humor of the original trilogy and the intensity of the 2013 film. I'm not gonna say the movie overworked these elements, like it was pushing it too much, because it wasn't. I'm also not gonna say that the movie really delivered that humor and delivered that intensity. So the movie is funny, it is intense, but it's not as funny and it's not as intense. But it was really entertaining to see it try to balance these two ideas. Also, I really enjoy that kind of unexpected humor in a horror movie because it really throws you off balance. It makes you wary and a little bit apprehensive. So for that, I enjoyed this movie. We have a packed 1 hour and 36-minute runtime, and this movie really gives a lot. It gives you enough that you don't actually need to watch any of the previous films. Obviously, if you want the full experience, you're gonna wanna watch the original trilogy, 2013's Evil Dead, the TV show. That way you can catch like all the Easter eggs, the callbacks, all of those little things. One thing I will say, you guys, and I don't want to come across like I knew all of this before I wrote out my script. I didn't. Initially, when I came out of the theater, I was thinking about the franchise as a whole. It's giving anthology. The franchise feels very loosely connected. I remember talking to my honey after we left the theater, and I was wondering like if by the next installment, the story as a whole will feel more connected. There's already connections, you guys, that we picked up on in the movie. And this is where I started to read some articles that were elaborating on the little ideas that I had in my head. I will link all the articles in the description below. There are spoiler warnings as well for the links that contain spoilers, but more connected. So certain characters, certain things, certain iconic things coming together and what that might look like in the future. But if you're looking for a solid horror flick, if you're looking for a movie that is violent and disturbing, if you're looking for a movie that's sometimes scary, if, again, you are a fan of the franchise, then you can't miss this movie. If you don't like horror, if you don't like movies with throwaway characters that are literally there to die, you're not meant to connect with them, they're just there to get killed. If you had a hard time watching or could not get through Evil Dead 2013, if you don't like sometimes scary movies, when I say sometimes scary, there are some jump scares, but the movie rather leans on that action we were talking about earlier, that realistic violence. Now, if the realistic violence is scary, then this movie is more than sometimes scary. If you're looking for a fun family movie, and arguably maybe this is a fun family movie. If you don't like violent movies, also I saw more than one negative review talking about feminism and motherhood like it was an issue. So if you don't like that either, I would look for another movie to watch. Alright, movie fans, that brings us to the end of the video where I watched it so you don't have to. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. If you're watching here on YouTube, I'm going to leave a link to the podcast down below. Leave the video a thumbs up if you like the video so I know you like the video. Let me know down below, have you seen Evil Dead Rise yet? If you saw the movie, what did you think about it? This was another one of those movies on my list of most anticipated films of 2023, and I have to say, you guys, it's not a bad movie. This is not a bad movie, but it wasn't everything I expected it to be. Touching back on the intensity of 2013's Evil Dead, I was expecting that level of intensity, honestly, you guys, higher. And so in that regard, Evil Dead Rise did fall short. Again, it's a good movie. I just wanted more. We've talked about plenty of things that I really enjoyed that this movie did, but one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is lore. It did a lot to establish lore. Okay, come on. Okay. Okay, again, my dog is here, you guys. What was I saying? Oh, I love lore. And you know what I love more than lore, you guys? The Marauder. Oh my goodness. If you listen to my podcast exclusive episode on Infinity Pool that I posted in March, he's turning my chair. If you listen to the podcast exclusive episode that I posted on Infinity Pool in March, then you'll know that I absolutely love body horror. You'll know my body horror preferences. You guys, I was not ready. But let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comments down below. While you're down there, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next movie that I'm going to be watching for you. I did plan to watch Sisu this past weekend. I ended up having to return the tickets. My honey and I did go see Return of the Jedi, and it was incredible. Up next is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I've noticed that my MCU videos don't do so hot. But I really enjoy these movies, so I'll be here next week to talk to you guys about it. Also, let's send out good vibes, prayers, positive energy for our favorite characters because I'm worried. The podcast exclusive for Suzume dropped today. I know both of these episodes were supposed to come out last week, but last week it wasn't happening and I had to be okay with that. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for hanging out with me and for watching. You can catch new episodes of I Watched It so you don't have to every Friday. But until the next video, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, and if you ever find a book bound in human flesh, written in human blood, you put that baby back where you found it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.